Yes, folks, I'm Fred McMurray. It's 2 p.m. Pacific. It's Thursday, and we've had 25 seconds of applause, so this must be... God, I love the guitar riff. I can play that over and over and over again. I truly love that guitar riff.
I think that you should have Markel's at your next rebirthday party on the beach and have him bring that guitar live.
Yeah. Well, you know what's funny? My son is up for an award. We have these local NAPPY awards, and he's up for an award for being in a brass band on his trumpet and a folk punk alternative band for his guitar.
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that's cool. Hey, so not only happy Friday Eve, but happy Memorial Day Friday Eve.
I can't believe it's already Memorial Day.
I don't know what happened in May.
No, me either.
Yesterday was high school graduation. The week before was 8th grade graduation. It's barely, Chicago's had maybe 2 weeks total in the whole month of May that have had sun. Well, not even 2 weeks, maybe above 50. It's been miserable.
Yeah.
But enough about that. Let's get on with some business.
Let's do. I'm excited about this show. It's somebody that you were kind of social media.
Wait, time out before you get to the show. We have fireworks because, of course, we are welcoming a new member resource.
We are. If you had just told us, we would have planned and queued that whole thing up.
Yeah, well, it took me by surprise, so, whatever.
Okay, well, okay. Would you like to do that introduction then from afar?
No, I'll let you do it because you're well knowledgeable of the new resource coming in, and given that it was just graduation and most people don't get, fireworks. Hey, what the hey?
Oh. You have to put your face in the camera. Okay, so this is my daughter, Johanna.
Hi.
She is fresh out of high school and on her way to University of Chicago as a journalism major. And so she is going to be helping Elizabeth with our digital magazine, some of our blog stuff, and for any of our folks that need some help writing. So welcome to her. Welcome, baby girl.
Yes, I'm so excited to have her. I can't wait to get started.
Yeah,
okay.
So that'll be a ton of fun, and I can't wait to get her to work. So she's going to be joining us silently on the side today so she can take notes of how the show goes and how the craziness ensues once we are live after the applause stops. So with Memorial Day right around the corner, I hope everyone has great plans and has a safe holiday and spend some time with family and friends. But let's get into word on the street, Elizabeth.
So word on the street has to do with our guest, which is Daniel Stein from Special Strong. So he has a whole fitness program for special needs individuals. So we thought we would talk about diversity in the workforce in terms of people who may struggle with neurodiversity or disability or any of those things, and just talk about the ideas of incorporating some of those people into your workforce. And I don't know if everybody is aware, but there are a lot of government programs that will help subsidize that and help with training to get people up to speed so that they're able to perform the jobs that you need them for. And it's just something to be aware of and to remind everyone of, I think, because it's an important part of the workforce. I have cousins who are one is Down syndrome and one is non-verbally autistic. And so for them to have jobs and feel productive and do things out their ages, they're 20, one just turned 24. It's a huge, important part of our economy.
Yeah, absolutely. And And I'll tell you, you are correct. Before we had that reminder from Fred, I have been stalking Daniel for months now, because if you've ever had a few extra minutes and you haven't checked out Special Strong, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on Facebook, the videos that he shows will literally bring you to tears.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are amazing, life-changing events that his facility helps provide to some of these folks. And they're all different age groups, all different disabilities, or in different places. And so I can't wait to bring him on. And I think it's a really good idea, Elizabeth, that you pointed out that there are a lot of opportunities for small businesses to employ folks that maybe you don't think are necessarily able to work in your environment. And, we used to, when I was with Home Depot, we would have them with job coaches quite frequently. Mm-hmm. And it was great because, then you have them working themselves into the community. They feel good about what they're doing. Their job coach is there to help them with anything tricky or anything that perhaps is beyond their knowledge level. And I just think it's great to try to get everybody working, so everybody feels as a human that they can contribute to society today.
Yeah. So I'm going to post in social. There's a page on dol.gov that talks about campaigns for disability employment, partnership on an inclusive apprenticeship, building an inclusive workforce. So it gives you sort of some checklists and guidelines of how you would approach that if you were interested in something like that and have jobs that anybody who wanted to work could do. There's some information on addressing the needs of youth with disabilities for getting jobs and internships and that kind of thing. So I'll post that on our social media just so you have a handy dandy reference point.
Right. The other thing I want to just point really quickly in this article that jumped out right away from me is mental health at work. Mm-hmm. Last week we brought that up with Ellie Mental Health, and obviously it's part of this as well. And again, small business, large business, it doesn't matter. It's about recognizing the human for who the human is, meeting them where they're at. And I think that take a look at this article. I mean, there are some amazing campaigns out there. Who am I? I can. All different things that can help people get involved. And when we're in a labor crunch like this, listen, this is a great place to look, dependent, of course, upon the type of business that you own. So don't let this opportunity slide past you.
Absolutely. I think definitely worth reminding ourselves of, especially like you pointed out in the labor crisis. Are you ready to bring on our guest?
I am, but let's remind folks, if they have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can call in at 323-580-5755. Again, that's 323-580-5755. Let's get on with the show.
All right. Welcome to our special guest, Daniel Stein, on Pillars of Franchising. We are so excited. We've been wanting to have him on the show for a while. And I am going to read his bio because it does such a great job explaining who he is and what he does. At the age of 4, Daniel was diagnosed with a learning disability, and the doctor said his only options were medication and therapy. He struggled in school to make friends, got bullied for being different. In middle school, his parents got him a gym membership to the YMCA, and he started exercising, and it changed his life. By the age of 21, he was diagnosed with a mood disorder and an autoimmune disease. Not only did exercise change his life, it gave him the strength and confidence to live an independent and abundant life as he took control of his future. As a result of his challenges, he felt a deep calling to help others with mental and physical challenges experience an abundant life through health and fitness.
She froze.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know if that was me. Since we're frozen, I'm gonna grab something real quick.
Yep. Elizabeth, you froze. And she was on quite a roll too.
Yeah, she was doing great.
Let's see here. You froze. She just had her internet upgraded too. That's okay.
It happens to me. It's weird in our office. I can't figure it out, but anytime somebody else comes into the office that has another building, when they connect to the internet, for some reason mine gets shut off. I don't understand that. It always happens at the worst times. Like when I'm in a Zoom meeting, it never happens when I'm just browsing the web. It always happens when I'm in a Zoom meeting. So.
Yeah. I had it happen today when I went to I have a fleet. So I own a Molly Maid franchise. I have 4 territories and we have 15 cars. So at least, twice a month, I'm out getting new tags for whichever car is, due to be registered again. And today I had 3 and I went to the currency exchange and, the computers are down.
Of course.
I'm like, really? Like I've been driving around with these tags I've needed now for at least a month because I procrastinate. So now I have to go back again. But yeah, I have a son who is on the spectrum and he has ADHD and he had ODD. And boy, it's been a really tough last 13 years.
Yep. How old is he now?
He's going to be 14 in May.
Got it. Is he medicated and everything?
Yeah. When I resisted the medication for a very long time.
Sure.
Because they came up with.
Today, they continue to expand Special Strong to other markets through Special Strong franchising. Movement in every state and multiple countries around the world. You can visit specialstrong.com to find out more. And
when I received that vision from my mentor,
Hey, I just did Elizabeth, Jerry. How about you?
I didn't, but I was really shocked when I looked up and saw that you and I were on the screen.
I think that's going to give us a moment to fix the technical difficulties we're having with the server. But oddly enough, that's where Daniel and I were talking during our interview about technical difficulties.
We live in a world that's all based on technology now, and there's going to be difficulties all the time. We just have to roll with it, right?
Hey, it's kind of like having a small business.
It's exactly like having a small business. There's something new all the time that you cannot expect or prepare for.
Yeah.
You just have to figure your way through it, right?
Yeah. I mean, one moment you're completely in control, and the next moment the wheels have fallen off and they're rolling down the road.
Oh, I get it. I'm looking at the screen now and I see I've the about half of my face on. So I'm trying to figure out there. I'll lean this way.
There you go. There you go. Well, that's always the trick when we try to make sure that we're bringing very high quality guests. And with Daniel, I mean, really, she's not kidding when I stalked him for months to try to get a hold of him. And so unfortunately for him, Thursdays are really busy. So we had to do a pre-record, which was amazing. But as you could see, we had some hiccups along the way, getting the pre-record even going smoothly with internet and all. So anyway, apologize for all that. But let's get on to what you and I are going to talk about, which is franchisees who are looking to expand their business.
Expand or start their business, because I want to talk about acquisitions. First off, just like you, we grew our business partially through acquisitions. We have, some organic growth, but part of them were through acquisitions. But what most people don't know is our very first location, our very first franchise was an acquisition. It was not one where you call a franchise broker and they set you up with, 3 or 4 to look at, or those kinds of things. We actually were approached by a business broker, which is different, but affiliated with a franchise broker. Mm-hmm. A lot of times business brokers will have existing franchises and maybe even new franchises listed, as well as, non-franchise businesses. So my point with all this is I want our listeners to understand, whether you're buying your first one or expanding, acquisitions is a great way to go. And I want to talk specifically for a minute about somebody thinking about buying their first franchise, and make sure that they don't overlook buying an existing one, because you start looking at new ones, and every new one is going to have some ramp time. In other words, you're not going to break even for a while.
That's right.
When you read the FDDs and you start looking into it, every one of them will have a different break-even time, and those kinds of things. So you just have to dig into it. But I've really never seen one less than about 4 months, and some of them are well over a year, maybe even into 2 years.
Sure.
And for our listeners who don't understand, that means you're borrowing money for months or maybe even over a year to keep the business flush. And that may or may not include a paycheck for you. So you need to be prepared when you're buying a new franchise.
I always look. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jerry, but that's a really good point, because I'm working with a gal to buy a franchise right now, and she's very excited. But she's having the same struggles so many of us do and have, and that's, well, geez, at what point can I actually quit my job, right? And her family relies on her having a certain amount of income, and so when we're working through her pro forma, there are some things that she knows, and then there's some things that she doesn't know. And so as she's going for her loan, she needs to make sure that her loan is going to see her through those months in which she's not going to be making a paycheck.
Yeah. And most people forget about that, Kristin. Frankly, too many of them forget about the fact they need to subsidize their business for a while, because that should be a part of your upfront loan. But they forget they need a paycheck. So in our situation, my wife and I continued to work for quite some time after we started the business, because we needed a paycheck, we needed insurance, health insurance, all those kinds of things. So I guess the big point, the overarching point here is that you need to talk to an expert about this and dig into what it looks like. But, the opposite of buying a new one where you've got that ramp time, when you buy an existing franchise, they're cash flowing or making some money or some version of that, depending on the condition of the business. We bought businesses that were not making money, but they were close. Yes. And we saw by changing the way that they did business, in other words, perhaps that franchisee wasn't following the system that they had bought. Very common. So we knew if we came in and went back to where it should have been, that it would grow exponentially, whatever that number is. We usually put a percentage on it in our world. And then there's things that you can do above that. When you buy a franchise, they give you a way of doing business, kind of a guideline or a playbook, but there's always room to do more. And I think of more primarily in operations and training and even marketing, so that you can grow beyond that. But so many people have lost track of the fact that there are a lot of existing franchise groups for sale out there. You just have to find them.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, I was just listening to, my friend over at Vetted Biz, and he just did a thing about business brokers, a couple that had a business broker franchise, as a matter of fact. And they were talking about, it's very challenging for people. Within the franchise community, it can be challenging, but outside of the franchise community, when you're talking about private businesses, you kind of look at these people as business coaches, business consultants, a little bit of like a realtor in them, right? Like they know the area, they know the market. Some of them specialize in certain verticals, whether maybe it's car care, maybe it's food, right? And so they're a great resource. And the best part about it is it doesn't cost you typically as a buyer, anything.
Yeah, it's just like buying a house. Typically the seller is paying the fee for the sales process, not you. And it's the same in buying an existing franchise from a broker. Typically the seller is going to take care of that. There's a lot of ways to look at this, and many franchisees may want to buy a brand new one that they can develop themselves and all that kind of stuff. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The vast majority of franchisees get started that way, but you need to understand the downside and the hiccups and the hurdles that you're going to have to go through to get there. One of them is cash flow, right? And so when we buy existing franchises, we typically are looking for one that is cash flowing or maybe even making some money. That there is but there's still an upside to it. So we're willing to pay whatever it takes to get in. You will likely pay more to get into the business that way than you would if you bought a new one. Right. But the rough edges are worn off. The guy or lady that started it has already got it running. They've already got employees. Now, let's face it, you may change some employees, you may change some ways of doing business, but for today and the foreseeable future, you wouldn't necessarily have to change anything to remain the same or grow a little bit. So I just want our listeners to think about that, because that is in my opinion, something that's overlooked quite often in the franchise industry.
Yeah, I agree. We did have a question come in from chat wanting to know what we think are some of the best growing franchise verticals to buy right now. I know we've talked in the past about service businesses because it's such low overhead, growing demand, and those types of, especially, services for whether it be, personal services, whether it be home improvement services. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say personal services is one of the fastest growing, and really, honestly, Kristin, when I analyze it and talk to the people that are in that space, we don't see any end in sight to growth on that side. The personal service, we're a society that loves our stuff. We love to get massages, and we love to get, chiropractic done, and we love to get, all kinds of things, nails and hair, and the whole thing. And so. And now that's expanded into, a lot of other personal care things like cryotherapy and all that, the new medical type things that are coming down the pike. So right now, nobody sees any end in sight to that category. The service industry, I think we learned through COVID, service industry continues to grow because, most of us don't like doing some of the things the service industry does, right? We don't like cleaning our own house. We don't like doing our own plumbing and those kinds of things. So those categories are not going away. They're going to continue to grow. So I would look at all of those. There's a lot of moving going on in the United States, people moving from state to state and region to region. So I think anything related to moving and shipping is going to be something that will continue to grow for the foreseeable future. And I know Fred gets grumpy when I talk about what. Wait, Fred's grumpy most of the time, so we don't have to go into that part of it. But food is not going away. We're going to continue to eat. We're going to want new things to eat. We're going to want all kinds of things. And I watch that really closely, and there's a lot of really cool brands that are coming through that space right now.
Yeah, one of my favorite are those poke bowls. Those are my favorite indulgence, just so you know. We do have a question here. So actually, I've got a couple for us here. One, it's a great question. It's we're not necessarily exactly on the topic, but it's one that certainly hits our bottom lines, especially in my type of business and maybe in your chiropractic business. But are there any tips on reducing liability workers' comp insurance? I mean, I'll tell you, I have probably one of the lowest in our group in the Chicago market for our workers' comp, and we go for it's under residential home care cleaning, and we've also run under the janitorial code before. But I will tell you, a ton of training goes into how to work safe, how to protect their backs, slip and falls, things of that nature. And making sure that you work with your employees. If they get hurt, go to them right away, find out what the problem is. Is it something that can be dealt with first aid versus, do they really need to go in an ambulance? I had a girl who really wanted to go or thought she needed to go in an ambulance. So we wound up laying out on the carpet doing a few yoga stretches. Next thing you know, we're up and walking out the door. And I thought, wow, well, that was not so hard, But again, those are situations in which you have the opportunity to do those things, and not all situations give you that opportunity. So
yeah, but you started your conversation with this, Kristin. Understanding how that system works is where you have to start, and it is primarily based on occurrences. Yep. So you want to try and limit the number of times people get in situations where you have an occurrence where somebody gets injured and claims something through that. So, and you mentioned chiropractic, but you didn't mention hair care. And I will tell you, slip and fall is one of the worst ones in hair care because they spray conditioners and things in hair that fall on the floor, and they can slip on that. They can trip over things, slide on hair that's on the floor, all kinds of things. And what many people don't understand is they also cut themselves quite often with those sharp shears.
Oh,
they're so sharp, they don't even know they've cut themselves many times until they see the blood. So there's multiple problems with that. But if we're just talking about the workers' comp side of that, I mean, we literally have a situation where we just have them go directly to the emergency room and get stitched up because we've found that's the least cost way to do it. Which helps your, in your overall cost thing. Trying to keep occurrences down comes to training to some extent like you, and then finding ways to avoid it, like making sure that, they're cleaning the floor quite often and they're paying attention to what they're doing. trying to not let them get tired, because when they get tired, things happen. So taking breaks. So that's how you manage that, in my opinion, is you have to understand it. And then you have to watch your job sites to make sure that your people are trained and there are less things that they can get injured on or with. So that would be my 2 cents.
Yeah, I think that's great. We do have a couple of questions. I've got one. Let me just zoom up here because I kept clicking back. Okay, so one is from Columbus, and they want to know if you know of any payments being taken by franchisees in form of cryptocurrency.
I do not know right now. I know some franchisees are talking about it. My belief is the franchisor will have something to say about that, because a piece of every dollar you get is a royalty that goes to that franchisor, and they're not going to deal with cryptocurrency. So I think it's coming, and there are going to be some, especially emerging brands in particular, that really grasp onto that. But right now, I don't know of anybody. There may be some out there, but they're in the minority. And frankly, I have had a lot of conversations being on a couple of the boards that I'm on in franchising. And I think everybody is looking at it. Everybody is cognizant of it, but very few of them are excited to take that step. So it's going to be a little while before you see it widespread.
Yeah. I think I agree. I haven't heard of anyone either, but it doesn't mean it's not out there. And Tampa wants to know, what is the biggest issue you have faced in running multiple locations?
Frankly, I think running multiple locations is pretty easy. So I will tell you the thing that I think is something that people have to pay attention to, and they don't very often, is keeping everything the same. It's like a franchisor does, except you're a franchisee with multiple locations. So making sure that every location feels like you're paying attention to them. So you're not being portrayed as liking the location closer to you than the one furthest away or something. Making sure that you keep your culture where it needs to be, because that's, with our organizations, we do a lot of virtual meetings, and I actually do. We've got private Facebook pages for each of our organizations, so I can do short video snippets on there just to keep everybody's momentum up, keep them excited about what they're doing and those kinds of things, and let them know I'm thinking about them, even if they don't see it all the time. So I don't see running multiple locations is a big thing. You've got you've got a mechanical type things that you have to do, operational type things. So for instance, if you're running multiple locations, you have to have a bank in each of those locations. The bank, the name bank that you use may not have branches there. So you have to set up sweep accounts with a local bank. So all the money's deposited and swept into your account, wherever it might be. You have to deal with different utilities and all those landlords and all that kind of stuff. Hiring can be a little bit dicey, because if you're not in that market, you either have to do it virtually or have a general manager there that does it, or things like that. But from my standpoint, again, we are we're about 10 hours from one end of our market to the other driving time. We are scattered over 2 states, very rural states. So we don't have a big bunch of them in one location. So our listener, I live this every day. My family lives it every day. And frankly, we don't see it as a real issue. Again, yes, there's some steps you have to take. But at this point in time, and for the last 10 years, we have not really seen that as an issue. In fact, I'd recommend, from a diversification standpoint, having multiple locations, because different, for instance, we're in blue collar, white collar, and gray collar markets, and the economy impacts those 3 categories differently. So that way you've got a nice balance and ebb and flow between all of them. So I think there's way more positives than negatives. And if our caller wants to have, further conversation on issues with doing that, they can certainly get a hold of me, and I'm happy to do that one-on-one.
Excellent. Well, and there is, let's see here, I do have a follow-up to that. Let me see, Louisville, I'm coming to you next after this one. So what brands would you recommend for somebody who's interested in going into multi-unit location ownership? That's again from Tampa, kind of a follow-up.
Sure. A lot of them, these are good questions too. I don't know if I want to go into naming a lot of brands because, frankly, they all have good and bad things about them. But one thing I would tell you is if you're going to be in multiple units, especially over a pretty large geographic area, try and buy into systems that need less of your one-on-one time. In other words, you don't have to be in that location very often. They kind of run themselves. So I'll give you an example. I mean, we're doing hair care, and we've got area managers across the 2 states that take care of a certain number of salons, so we don't have to be there all the time. So once you train those area managers and you have weekly meetings with them to go over what's going on in their business, their side of the business, it's pretty easy to run. Our chiropractic clinics kind of run themselves because we're dealing with some really top-notch professionals that would be running their own clinics sometimes. So that's easy. But if you get into some other brands where it's very labor intensive from the top end, from your level, it can be problematic. It can be time consuming. You can actually hold back the organization because you simply can't be in all places at all times. Yeah. So, rather than naming franchises, I would look at categories. I've got a good friend that owns, Smoothie King, and there are several great brands out there that compete with them right now. Tropical Cafe I'm seeing, and I just lost the name of another one, but there's 2 or 3 other really good ones out there. And those are things that, they don't take a lot of your time. If you've got a manager in them, they will kind of take care of themselves. So I would look at something, any brand, as long as the category itself takes less of your one-on-one time. And again, the caller, if they want to dig into that a little bit more, we can have some one-on-one time, but I'd like to give plenty of opportunity for lots of franchise systems to get their face in front of people,
Right. And it is important to understand that not all franchise systems will allow you to be semi-absentee or absentee owner. So you brought up Tropical Smoothie Cafe. We had them on a luncheon with great people, really, really engaging. And I had gone into one and we made a little TikTok video, but I talked to one of the girls and I said, so where's the owner? Does the owner live around here? She said, oh no, they live in Michigan. They just come in every now and then. And I'm like, that's awesome. Right. And so, and really for a Tropical Smoothie Cafe, what do you really need? Right. And so not that you don't need strong leadership and not that you don't need strong management, especially with, you're typically employing younger people who maybe not be as responsible as you need them to be when you're customer facing, and maybe, the quality of service they're providing isn't the same, but at least if you get the hiring right, it gives you flexibility to not have to be in that shop every single day.
It's about leadership, and it starts with you. And then if you've got a hierarchy, like an operations manager and a general manager and a store manager or whatever, you've got to have that culture and the systems built to do it. But again, it is not that complicated. And, you talked about franchisees living out of state. There's lots of brands that'll do that. You did bring up a great point. So to our listener, I would tell you, and one of them comes to mind right away, is Chick-fil-A, where they typically want you to only own one, and they want you to be in that a certain number of hours per week. So that would be one where you would not be able to potentially, I understand there are some times, but potentially you only get one and you have to work in it. There are some others. Crumble Cookies is another one that wants you in there a certain amount of time, and they tend to want you to own one. And I know there's extenuating times when they may let you own more than one, but so don't anybody, kill me because I said, but just the listener needs to understand, I would look at that side of it. And when you're having those calls with brokers or franchisor reps or something like that, that you ask those kinds of questions. Is there opportunity for me to own multiples? Excuse me. How far out can I go? Some of them may want you to stay in the same state or the same region. Others don't really care. If you can put together a great team on the other side of the country, they will allow you to do that, especially with virtual, communication and so on right now. So,
and we have another question here, Jerry, which we've talked a lot about over the past few weeks, and it's something that, I can tell you, any female in franchising is hoping to fix this problem, and that Louisville wants to know, why is female ownership in franchising so low, only 31%? And I have to tell you, personally, I wish I had gotten into it sooner. And, I can say that the IFA is doing a great job at engaging women in franchising. And that's only been the last couple of years that's been going on. The SBA has, the WSBA for women-owned businesses. There's a lot of resources out there, but I think part of it is, I hate to make this sound bad, but I think we're all so damn busy that sometimes it just is like yet another thing to take on. It's, can I do it? Sometimes it's a matter of having the guts. Sometimes it's a matter of knowing that there are so many resources out there. Sometimes we're just so overscheduled that we just don't take time to think about what is it that we really want to do with our lives, right? We're so busy being moms and hockey moms and baseball, and you're doing a million different things. And so I hope that we see more and more people wanting to get into it, because I think that the franchise model is perfect for women who either have experience in business or don't, quite frankly. But what are your thoughts, Jerry?
You touched on several things there, and I'm going to preface this so I don't get, burned at the stake with the rest of the conversation, but I'm going to preface it with, I will do anything I can to level the playing field and to get more women into it. I think you're right on that the franchising is absolutely the perfect opportunity for women to grow and expand and own their own business and, help their family. I have this vision of more single moms getting into it so that they can change the trajectory of the family's life and things like that. But you touched on the mom thing, and whether we like it or not, women so often are tied up the first 20 years of their adult life dealing with children, right? So it may be hard for them to even think about owning a business. Going to a 9-to-5 job is way easier in that situation, so that you can rush home to your kids, make it to ball games and all those kinds of things. And that's great. But although it's changing, unfortunately, the vast majority of the child care still falls on the women. So until that part of it gets in different position, or until women say I can do this too, which some of them do, like you and many of my friends that are in franchising. But I think many women just get stuck in that position, and it's hard for them to break out of it. And let's face it, if you suddenly wake up and it's 38 or 40 years or 45 years old, whether you're a man or woman, you may not decide to get into a franchise system or own your own business. And since women do get tied up in the whole child thing for a long time, it's just, I think it's to be expected, not because it's the right thing, but because it's just the way that the math is working right now. So I would like to see young women. In fact, we talk about Titus, right? Titus Center for Franchising down at Palm Beach University and so on. And then Louisville University of Louisville has a great one. And my friend up in the Northeast is going to kill me, but one of the colleges in the Northeast has one too. We need more colleges that have those, because they're attracting women who are, of college age. Right. And that is going to help spur a lot more of those women to get into franchising early on, and we'll start kind of balancing the equation a little bit.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I know that there are a lot of groups out there that help support women who want to get into this. Funding tends to sometimes be an option for people, but I have to tell you, don't let it be. Feel free to reach out. Elizabeth and this is kind of one of our hot buttons, and that's making sure that we can find resources for women. 2 weeks ago, we did the Women in Franchising episode. Take a listen to some of those, and you'll find people who, listen, I had no idea how we were going to do it. I just knew I was tired of balancing a demanding job, 2 kids. And then, of course, right after we bought my franchise, we closed, and boop, guess what? Baby 3's here. And so it's like, holy hell, what happened? But it can all be done. And there are some great home-based models for a woman who wants to get into it, but isn't sure how much she can commit, isn't sure how much time. It's just amazing. So please reach out. I don't want to cut you short, but we got a lot of questions coming in, which is great.
One more point, and then you go ahead. First thing I want to tell you is, when I was doing my little soliloquy about women and childbearing, all that kind of stuff, I was watching Elizabeth because I didn't want her to be the one that kills me later on, right? But the other thing I'll tell you is, as we, the world understands the issue with getting more women into franchising. So I will tell you, virtually every funding group out there will do anything they can to try and help women find funding, and let's not say just women, but any marginalized community, right?
That's right.
Most of the funding groups out there are very cognizant of it. They're working towards it. So I would not want any of our listeners to hold back because of funding, because it's likely there is something out there that will help you with that. So
absolutely.
Let's get more women into franchising. I'm with you on it.
Yep, absolutely. And Jerry, when you need local banks, the next question is, do you need different lawyers for each state that you're in?
Well, maybe yes, maybe no, because we deal with a fairly large law firm in our state, in our city, and they've got each of the attorneys has a different specialty, and many of them are licensed in multiple states. So for instance, if you want to do business in your state and an adjacent state, a neighboring state, it's fairly likely your attorney or one of his attorney associates is licensed in that state and can take care of it for you. If you want to go 3 or 4 states over or a different region, then it's possible you will need a different attorney. But I would consult with my attorney first, because he's my trusted advisor. We talk about that all the time, and tell him the situation. He or she will help you on that. I'm going through that right now because of the clinic I'm buying where the person passed away. And we got a lot of attorneys involved in that because the widow and corporate and me and all that. So literally lean on your local attorney who you have a relationship with, tell them the situation, and they'll, and I did this in South Dakota. I asked my attorney if he could find me an attorney in South Dakota. Coincidentally, he went to law school with somebody from South Dakota. So, there are resources out there, so don't let it slow you down.
That's awesome. And I have a question came in from Minnesota. This is a good one. An old co-host used to ask, what are the first 3 items in the FDD you should read? And what does Jerry recommend to read first?
Well, for me, first off, I hate FDDs because they're like 400 pages long, fine print, legalistic stuff. And I don't know if I understand some of them. I'll just be honest with everybody. But for me, the first 2 things that I look at, and I base everything else on this, because if those 2 are okay, most of the rest of it, they're not going to change, and I'll work my way through whatever the expectations are. I look at Schedule 19 because I want to see what the money looks like.
Yes.
I want to see the quartiles. I want to see, the worst performing ones and the best performing ones on revenue and profit and expenses and all of those kinds of things. And I want to look and see if they've had any lawsuits against the corporation and what those lawsuits look like. Because sometimes when a franchisor is starting up, there may be some discrepancies and there may be some lawsuits. And now it's 20 years later. And although they're still in the FDD by law, they really don't mean anything at this point in time. But if there was one last year or in the last 5 years where a franchisee or a group of franchisees sued the franchisor, I'm going to want to know more about that. And that's going to lead to some very pointed questions when I do, my discovery day or when I continue to work as I go through that. So for me, I look at those 2 sections. I look at the money section and I look at the legal section, and I read the rest of it or have my attorney do it or both of us do it or whatever. But I don't really get into much more detail after that because frankly, the rest of it is kind of, just boilerplate stuff. And I know for a fact the franchisor is not going to change that for me. So reading it so I know what's in it is important, but reading it so that I can try and get something changed is not of interest to me. So those 2 things, Kristin.
Okay. I also there's a couple, one that has recently been of interest to me. Well, when I looked to buy a franchise, it was one of the factors that I opted out on a franchise. And that was item 8, which told me where I had to buy my supplies. And in this particular franchise, the reason that popped out is because in that particular franchise, it was an incestuous relationship in which all of my marketing had to go to one company who happened to be the brother of the founder and the CEO of the brand I was looking to buy. And so my FDD and my franchise agreement said, hey, you have to do direct mail and it has to be through this company. And oh, by the way, guess what? This company owner happens to be the brother of the CEO of the franchise brand. And I was like, no. Now they have since changed that, but that has really prompted me to look through that section. And then item 5 and 6, I tend to spend some time on with my folks that are looking to buy franchises too.
So to your point about the incestuous relationship, I've looked at a lot of FDDs and very few franchisors do that. That's a red flag, and I'm surprised you found one that did it, because anybody that pays any attention would catch that. And more importantly, if that came up later after you bought the franchise, that's grounds for you to sue them. And none of those franchisors want that on their FDD. So I'm a little surprised. You know, some franchise systems in a category, let's say office supplies, they give you 3 suggested vendors, but not required vendors.
Right.
That's typically what happens, or maybe 1 suggested, but not required. And so you have the opportunity to go somewhere else. There may be some things that are mandated. So things related to the brand would come to mind. So, you know, the golden arches for McDonald's perhaps might be something they get from 1 vendor because they want them all to look exactly the same.
Exactly.
Okay? So there are some times when there is some logic behind having the same vendor. But we like competition in franchising. So typically you're going to have options, and you can probably go out and find your own options if you want to.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Okay, San Francisco, do I need to use a broker to buy a new franchise or only an existing? No, you don't need a broker at all. However, I can tell you that using a broker makes all of the work that Jerry did in his book a lot quicker, a lot easier. It provides opportunities that maybe you won't find on your own. But you can use a broker or not a broker in both situations. I just happen to think that, in my personal opinion, I used a broker, and it was one of the best decisions that I could have made, because I would have never thought to buy a Maid franchise. Like that was not what I was looking for. But I couldn't be more happy that I did, because it worked for exactly what me and my family needed at the time. And it's turned out to be a great business model. You have any thoughts?
Yeah, I'll reinforce that. I think like 90% of the time you should use a broker, no matter what kind of business you're looking at, because to Kristin's point, they take a lot of the work out of it. They vet the other side, so you have less worry about what you're getting or not getting. They'll actually catch problems in the offering, in the real estate, in, you know, all the things that you get when you buy a franchise. So I think that's a good idea. The only time I don't necessarily think it's necessary is, for instance, if you know somebody that's already in that franchise group,
yes,
and you've been tracking their success for a while, and they know you, and they've said, hey, if you're thinking of a franchise, this is the one to be in because it fit for you, then you can probably go directly to that corporate group and work with their franchise rep, and they can help you with that. And the franchise rep is really a broker that doesn't make money off of it, because their job, they're paid, their salary is to help bring people in.
That's right.
You're still getting a lot of the same resources when you go to that, but you don't have an unbiased third party. So again, to Kristin's point, if you have any concerns, get a broker involved. They will give you some good guidance. But there are times when it may not be necessary.
Yep. Now I've got a couple different questions here. I had 7 more pop up, and I'm going to try to combine and condense them as best I can. So one of them is asking about why do we believe that the under 40 population will go off and start their own business, but they either don't or aren't considering buying a franchise? Is the franchising industry not wanting young owners? Well, let me tell you about a personal experience on that. I can tell you the industry would love young owners. I think that especially franchisors who recognize that their brand has been around for a while, and so have a lot of their owners, they're looking for fresh blood, not only to share ideas and to really help come in with fresh perspectives and higher energy levels. I see more and more brands looking for younger people. Listen, I'm only 50, and I'm out of date on most all of the social media stuff compared to my 14 through 17-year-olds. Like, they know stuff I don't. And so I think there's a lot to offer for younger people. I would never say that the franchise industry doesn't want younger people. That is just not the case. But I think it's a matter of educating people. And that's why we have the show, is to try to talk to people about all the opportunities that are out there. And there's such great brands for young, energetic people to go into.
Well, Kristin, most of the young people start their own business because they don't know better. And I'm not saying that from a negative standpoint. The fact is they get this really great idea of something that they think their community needs, or they'd be excited to own it or something like that. And they bootstrap it and they go out and make it happen and so on, which is great. I think that's phenomenal. I shout the praises from the rooftops, but the fact is 80% of those businesses will fail in the first 5 years. And it won't be because the young owner didn't try hard or didn't have a good idea. They may just not been able to put all the pieces together and cash flow it and so on. So I just think they don't understand that franchising is an expedited route to get into a fairly safe and secure business that may be very well related to whatever their idea was. Also, again, I don't want anybody to hang me up on this thing, but young people, because we were all young at one point in time, we think we can slay dragons and we've got a better idea than anybody else, and mine's going to be better than the other options out there. And there's nothing wrong with exploring that. But I think that's one of the reasons so many young people don't is they just think they can do it on their own. The other thing is many young people may do some online research about what it costs to open up a franchise and say, I don't have that much money. I don't have borrowing capacity. I'm going to do something else and I'll open up my own thing. Well, again, there are lots of ways to get financing in the franchise world. So if any of our listeners out there are, in that younger category and you think about it, do not let that hold you back until you've explored some other options. And as we say here on Pillars every week, we've got some great resources just here in our group in Pillars, and we'd love to have those conversations with you.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, again, if people go back and listen to some of the older episodes, we talk about different options and how you can go about either finding funding, leveraging what you have a 401k, how to approach your family to look for money, how to get partners, what's good and bad about partnerships. I mean, a lot of these things we talk about amongst ourselves all the time, and we try to share with you. So I'm really glad we're getting such great questions today. Here's one that says,
Kristin, stop.
Yep.
Stop. Let me go back on that one just a minute, because I want to close it up a little bit. Because you brought up a great point about looking for partners and things like that. And we both know that I don't do partnerships very well because I don't play nice with others. But the fact is, if you've got a young person out there that would like to buy a franchise and start their own thing when they're too young and don't have the bandwidth, the financial ability to borrow that money, for every one of those, there's at least one and probably like 5 people in their 40s or 50s who have a good job and want to continue at it, but would love to be a partner in a business. And they have the money and the borrowing capacity to partner with this person and maybe even mentor them a little bit. So, I mean, that's what I'm doing, right? In the joint, I've got Vinny. He's coming in to learn underneath me. He's going to slowly buy in, and then he's going to end up owning it someday. And there's a lot of those opportunities. So young people, keep that in mind. Yeah,
absolutely. I'm in that frame of mind right now myself. So there's a lot out there. Again, reach out. This is a great one. Again, we've talked about this too. Can any attorney help, or should a person use a specialized attorney? I'll tell you, for 90% of the stuff, in my opinion, and I think you agree, Jerry, you need a franchise attorney for a lot of what you're doing. Not every attorney understands franchising.
You're 100% right. And especially when you get started in franchising. So you get a franchise attorney to help you work through all that initial stuff, the FDD and getting all the documents done and making sure your interests are protected. Once you get out of that, after you've been doing it a while, and especially if you keep expanding and growing, you're going to end up having 2 or 3 attorneys probably. And you're going to have somebody that reads your leases and somebody that works on business documents that are not related directly to the franchisor, but more to some of the things you're doing locally. And so I think the first one you have is the franchise attorney, and you use them as long as you need to. And then at some point in time, you'll see there's some things somebody else can do. But I would not think about buying my first franchise without having a franchise attorney.
Yeah, absolutely. So the other one is, should someone who's just buying a franchise buy a franchise from a company that's been franchising for less than a year or 2? We've talked about this too, right? Pros and cons of an emerging brand versus pros and cons of an established brand. Would you like to go ahead and take it from there?
Sure. Yeah. The thing is, emerging brands might be phenomenal. And, it might be like, buying Apple 20 years ago or something like that, or 30 years ago. You might find that emerging brand that in 5 years is going to be just killing it, and they're going to be the best thing around, and you're going to do really well. You might also buy that emerging brand that's only around for 1 year, and then they never develop any momentum. They don't have great vendors. They didn't get enough branding or national marketing, and they just fail. And then you're kind of on your own. So I love emerging brands, and frankly, I will probably own 2 or 3 emerging brands in the near future. So I'm not suggesting people don't do it. I'm just suggesting if it's a risk and reward type thing, Kristin. If you want to take a little more risk with an emerging brand for your first one, just understand there is more risk with it. When you go with somebody that's been around for 10, 15, 20, 30 years or something like that, and has 200 to 2,000 units out there, they're pretty stable. They're probably not going anywhere. Your money's safe. You've got good name recognition. So even if you decided it wasn't for you later on, you can easily sell it. But when you buy an emerging one, it might be a little bit of a struggle for you for a little while. And by the way, anybody that wants to work on an emerging brand, I can give you some insight into that too. So
I'm really excited. There's some emerging brands that I'm ready to jump into, and they're just not registered in the states I'm looking to work with them in. And I'll tell you that, again, we've talked about this on some of the episodes too, about the benefits of, being one of the new owners in an emerging brand. I'm working with one right now who really has their act together. I really like them a lot. We're placing somebody with them, and they're offering, because they're an emerging brand, they're offering all kinds of different incentives. And this person will be in their founder circle, kind of in their franchise action committee, who's able, or franchise advertising committee, however you guys want to say it, because there's different ones for different brands. But she's going to have a lot of opportunity to really kind of steer the organization as it grows. So again, if you've got that, younger person who, like you said, is ready to slay the day and go out and start their own business, an emerging brand might be a great fit, because over half the work is done, but you're still very involved.
Well, and Kristin, and this with the book and the learning platform and everything I'm doing on the other side, we are working with a lot of emerging brands. So I love them. I've got a very big affinity for them, because I'm bootstrapping with them, helping them get beyond that, first 5 or first 10 locations. So I am singing their praises when the right opportunity comes around for somebody. And actually, I just learned today, a brand that's not even registered yet is going to use our services to go through the process and to grow, and we're going to be their trainers moving forward. So I've got a lot invested in emerging brands. Don't anybody misconstrue what I'm saying.
Yep, absolutely. The next question says, I've got 2 more questions left. One says, how many hours a week should someone expect to work in their franchise the first couple of years? And is the number different when buying an existing franchise over a new one?
Okay, I'll take that, Kristin. You can tag team if you want to. Well, folks, I'll tell you, I have seen it so many times. Somebody buys one of these franchises and they want to be an absentee owner, because sometimes that's the way it's sold to them. And then 2 or 3 years later, they're complaining because they're seeing other people doing the same thing they're doing that are being very successful and making more money and have a second home in Florida or whatever the case might be. And it's entirely based on the amount of engagement that people have. So I would suggest, even if you want to buy your franchise and keep your regular job, that you probably put 15 or 20 hours a week minimum into your franchise. Some of that will be in the location, so your employees see you and your customers see you, and you understand the workings of the day-to-day stuff. And some of it will probably be doing like payroll and dealing with corporate and all those kinds of things. But I think easily 15 to 20 hours, and some of it has to be in the location. Now, there are some franchises you can buy and you'll be moderately successful with just putting it on autopilot and letting it go. But I've not seen one yet that comes up as fast and as strong if you're not engaged in it. And I would say the same thing goes if you buy an existing one. In fact, I would argue an existing one, you may want to spend more time inside the 4 walls for the first 2 to 6 months, because This staff is used to the way it used to be, and now you're going to make some changes, and they need to see first off that you really walk the walk. You're not just talking the talk. You're in there, like me, sweeping hair, painting, cleaning the toilet, whatever it takes, stocking the shelves. And after you build your culture and build your team, then you can spend a little less time, but still some time inside of there. But do what you want to do. It's your business. Yeah. But I can tell you, I've seen way too many people underperform with their franchise because they did not have enough engagement.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I spent upwards of 50 hours a week sometimes in my business when we got started. And it's mostly because it has multiple moving parts, right? It required someone to be out of the office meeting with clients. It required somebody to be in the office meeting with the employees. And when you're first starting, if you have a staff, and again, we started from the ground up with nothing, there's a lot of employee engagement that's needed. I wanted to make sure I understood as I hired people to help me build my business that did thoroughly every job I was going to ask them to do, because so many things. And again, it depends on your industry, right? Like Jerry didn't cut hair, so of course he's not going to have to be there making sure they know how to give a good haircut, right? But for me, I went out with my teams and I worked side by side with them cleaning to make sure that they understood not only were they following the procedures that Molly Maid had put together, but they were delivering to what my expectations were, which are a little different. They're a little bit harder to get to, right? And so I really think that depends on the business you have. It depends on who you are as a person. And it depends, as Jerry said, the culture that you want to build. And, to this day, my girls will know if there's a problem, I'll go out there, I'll grab a bucket and I'll be right there beside them, because I don't expect my employees to do anything I wouldn't do, nor do I expect them to deal with people who are abusive and anything like that. So I think it's all about how you want to set your culture and the type of business that you have.
Yeah, and the other thing I would say, because I know some very successful franchisees, the largest franchisee in the Great Clips system has 86 locations, and she's like my sister. Another large one has about 46 or something like that, and I've met some people from the joint that have quite a few. And the bottom line with every one of them, they don't have to work anymore. They could retire somewhere at whatever age they are and never work. And yet every one of them is still working 30 to 50 hours a week. Now, they're doing it from nice places. They're doing it from the road. They're doing it nights so that they can be out golfing and fishing and laying on the beach during the day. So you have a lot of flexibility, but you're still putting hours in.
Right. Absolutely. And the last question I had here was, where would you suggest, and we kind of touched on it, but is the best place to find a business partner? And I think talking to people who own businesses that you're interested in, right, is a really great place to start, especially once you get to know them and build a rapport. And, what do you have to say about that, Jerry?
Well, networking for one thing, because no matter how young you are or what your jobs are right now, you've got relationships, maybe at church, maybe at the golf course, maybe, clubs you're in, all kinds of things. Network, because a lot of the people in those situations have always wanted to own their own business, but don't want to leave their job or can't, and let me tell you this, I've seen this more and more in the last few years. Doctors, attorneys, people like that, they're not leaving their profession. They're going to stay in it forever, but they got lots of money and they would like to diversify. And if they could find a young person that brings them a great idea and creates a little trust in them, it's quite likely that they will invest and become a partner with you, and you're free to do what you want to do.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Jerry, thank you again for your time today. I'd like to thank everybody for writing in and calling in and chatting in with their questions. These are the kind of shows that I love doing because we get engagement and it's real world stuff that is on your minds. And by all means, if you all have something that you want us to talk about, things that are of your interest, please send them to us through our Pillars of Franchising page so that we can get those to you. And I would like to wish you all a very happy and safe Memorial Day. And Elizabeth, I think you're going to take us away today.
I am. So thank you so much for sticking with us through some technical difficulties. Sometimes the curse turns out to be a blessing when you've got all of these great questions coming in. So we enjoy that. Be sure to subscribe to pillarsoffranchising.com. Also, if you have questions that you didn't get answered today, you can email us at yourdream@pillarsoffranchising.com. Thank you so much for Kristin and Jerry for all of their energizing questions and answers. Thanks to Fred McMurray, our producer. I am Elizabeth Denham, your content producer. We together are your resource for franchising success. This has been the Pillars of Franchising, and the dream starts here.
Franchising.